Okay, friends, today's story is a sad story, but with a happy ending. At least I think it's kind of happy. Yesterday, my friend's dog passed away, and we had spent a whole lot of time. He has an incredible story. And I had gotten my dog, this is about 9 years ago, from the Animal Care League, which is the local shelter. And I met him, we were out at a festival here in town, and I fell in love with this dog and went to get him. And there was magic in that part of the story too, because when I went to go get him, two other families were in front of us, and she said, "You're third in line. He's already in with another family. Do you want to go see something else?" And we went and hung out with the cats in the cat room. I just had a phone call, and like my kids were loving up on the cats and didn't think anything of it. When we came out an hour later, they were like, "Wait, weren't you here for Jax? The other family left. The second family left, and the first family wasn't the right fit. So he's ready for you." Well, it turned out they wouldn't hold him. The whole 9 yards. Like, it was a miracle that we got him, because then my husband at the time needed to come get him. And anyway, we've had him for now 8 years. I think he's 9 years old. Anyway, 8 or 9 years. And then he was a ton of energy. He was a 1-year-old pup and already pre-trained. So I ended up taking him to the dog park to burn off some energy. And I would go every morning to just get all the wiggles out of him. And I met this wonderful woman there named Leslie. And Leslie had a dog named Leo, and Leo and Jax became good friends, and she and I would shoot the shit on the bench each morning or walk around talking. And she would wear one of those pussy hats. This was in the first reign of our current president. And, in his campaigning, she was very loud. She went to the Women's March. She had signs, like the whole 9 yards. We talked about knitting. We talked about her family. Lovely human. So fast forward a couple years after we did that for a couple years, and then I changed to a different dog park here called Miller Meadows. It's bigger, lets the dog run wild. And I think that we were maybe having an issue with another dog at the dog park, and it just became easier to go to this other one. And I didn't think much of it until COVID hit. And then that Easter, my friend Leslie and her husband were murdered, stabbed to death in their home over Easter weekend. And so was the dog Leo. He was stabbed in the neck. Well, he ended up surviving, I think, like 5 days alone in the house before they were found. And so Leslie's friend, Catherine, ended up adopting him from her sons. So she inherited Leo because they were friends. Their sons were friends for years. And I happened to be walking in the woods during COVID to keep my sanity, and ran into Catherine while she was walking Leo, and I didn't know her, but Leo came up to me and greeted me, and my heart just melted, because I never got to grieve my friend Leslie. It was COVID, it was drama, and I was heartbroken. So then I got to see Leo again, and I was so happy to see him, and it just lit me up, and of course I cried. And then I continued to walk in the woods, and I think I saw Catherine maybe a couple weeks later, and I went up to her and I said, "You're Leo's new mom, aren't you?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "We need to be friends, period." And she was like, the way she tells the story is that I was stalking her, and she had her headphones on and was like, "What's up with this crazy lady coming after me in the woods?" And I was like, I did stalk her because it was really important to me that we be friends, because I wanted to keep being friends with Leo. And then she and I have spent the last 5 years walking our dogs in the woods together, and we've become great friends. She calls herself my fairly good mother instead of my fairy godmother, and we laugh and just have the most delightful time. And she has since introduced me to her friend Linda, who happens to live 2 houses down from me now and helps me do laundry, and I make her cookies, and we just hang out and have the best time. And we've created our own little posse. And then we've added people to it. We've added probably a handful of other people and other dogs to go walk in the woods with us. And it has just been this delightful friendship. And Leo the dog he's been sick for about 6 weeks. And we tried everything, invested a lot, and it just didn't work. It was his time. So he's over the Rainbow Bridge and back home with his family. But it's really proven to me the magic. There's so much magic in this, right? So yesterday, after he had passed, I had a dream that night, and I saw this picture of a moth, and then I looked it up, and it was like, this signifies death. And it was like, oh right, because they're putting Leo down today. And then they put him down, And then that afternoon, my friend Linda asked if Catherine and I wanted to go on a walk in the woods, and of course we both did. And so we drove there, and on the way there, of course, a red Prius turned the corner in front of us, and I was like, look, there's Leslie's car. And so that was one of the signs. And then we went on our walk, and we saw these birds, and we told stories about Leo. And then as I was walking through the field to get, we were walking through the field to get back to the car, I almost stepped on a snake. And I was like, oh my gosh, I almost stepped on a snake, and didn't think much about it. And then it happened again, like 50 feet later. And I was like, oh, okay, let me look up the snake. Let me think about that. And that's like the shedding of things, right? And rebirth. And it's got so much symbolism. And so to me, that was a sign that he's okay and it's all good. And before we went to the woods, I'm doing a lot of ceremony these days. And a lot of that has to do with making an offering to Mother Earth to embody your prayers. And so I had, before I left my house, asked the things in my house what needs to come with me to the woods for this offering. And my roses that I've had for a couple weeks now that are just gorgeous spoke up and said, hey, we want to go. So I went to grab them. One of them I picked up totally just disintegrated. The petals went all over my house, which was hilarious. But the other three were intact. And so I took them, and I was like, thinking I just needed one. And they're like, no, take 3. I'm like, okay. And as I was leaving, I heard there's one for Leslie, one for Tom, and one for Leo. And Tom was Leslie's husband. So I took my 3 roses, and then I thought it was only going to be Linda and I going to the woods, but it turns out Catherine was available to go too. So when we got there, we went to our big tree that's our favorite, that is like the biggest tree in the county and happens to be this really beautiful cottonwood that's hundreds of years old and just majestic is the best way to put it. And so when we got to our tree, I said to the ladies, I've got a rose for each of you. And then we laid them down in tribute to Leo and Leslie and Tom. So it's a sad story with, I think, a happy life cycle ending. And I continue to, today Linda and Catherine and I went to the woods again. And it's just brought me so much joy to have them in my life. And, I'm able to give them food and they give me food. And as I'm cleaning out my apartment, I'm able to pass things on to Catherine's son. And Linda took some bowls, and it's just this beautiful friendship that I wouldn't have if I hadn't adopted Jax and gone to the dog park and met Leslie and then stalked Catherine in the woods. And here we are, about 9 years later, where it's all come together. And there's more tributaries, I would say, off of this story that just get woven together in beautiful ways. And I'm just so grateful. So there's your story for the day. May it bring you joy and love, and may you understand that there's so much more magic in the world if you're just available for it. See y'all soon.